Hey fellow farmers, it's me Mario. Today we're going to talk a bit about Agricola. So I'm not like a first class player of Agricola. I haven't been playing online till now because I didn't really like the Play Agricola implementation that was available before, but now that it's on Board Game Arena, I was able to play it out. I was playing with some friends of mine that are really good Euro players all around, but they were not able to play Agricola before. So I just set up on, finding some good articles for them, and I wasn't able to find any beginner's guide to Agricola out there. By beginner guide, I mean a guide that talks about strategy and the fundamentals of the strategy that the game is all about, and I wasn't able to find anything. So in this video I won't be talking about how to play. There are plenty of videos out there that are going to teach you how to play Agricola, and I won't be going too deep. I won't talk about all the nuances of the game. I would just talk about, the stock actions you should take to have a decent showing at a table. So without further ado, let's talk about the most important concept in Agricola, which is growing your family. Agricola is a kind of an old game, and while many worker placement games right now have some ways to hinder the player who grows his workforce, Agricola was all about growing your family. Growing your family is very good. The only problem is finding food, as we're going to see, but growing your family is what you're going to do, what you should have in mind right at the start of the game, and you should keep it in mind all the time. So, to grow your family, you're going to need a farm expansion, you're going to need another room, because you start with only two of them, and you're going to need to take the wish for children action, or later on the urgent wish for children action. So growing your family is very good because you start with 2 pips, and just going up to 3 will make you 50% stronger, and that's very, very, very good. So the first player to grow has an advantage in Agricola. So that means that a big part of the game revolves around trying to get up to 5 wood and to read. So that's what you should have in mind all the time. If you're the first one to have a farm expansion, and if you're able to get the wish for children early on, you're going to get a big advantage. But the trick is that it's not over yet. You should always think about having more children. You shouldn't stop at 3 pips, even though it's theoretically possible to win on 3 farmers. It's way easier to do that with 4 or 5. So, and they are worth 3 points each at the end of the game. So you should really, really, really keep in mind that growing your family is the most important thing you should do in any given game. And that's already going to improve your win rate, or at least the points that you're going to make at the end of the game, quite a bit. So there is a dance in the early game that revolves around, playing some cards and getting wood and getting reed, so to be able to get a farm expansion before everybody else and hopefully get a wish for children before everybody else. Agricola though is not a perfect information game, so the wish for children action may come out early or later on, and depending on that you might have to dance a bit to get the first player, but that's like an advanced concept. Just keep in mind that trying to grow your family is something you have to do. It's not an if, it's a when you're going to grow, and then when you're going to grow again. I know many new players are like, they might find themselves disliking Agricola because they think that growing your family is everything. It kinda is, but there are ways around it. So if somebody is the first one to grow, you can be the first one to grow twice, so you might be able to get 2 rooms in one action and then grow twice, which might be something decent because you're going to save action on the overall action economy of the game. Another way is to find very efficient ways to get action, like sometimes you play different cards that are going to improve one single action, and by taking that action it's like you're taking 2 or even 3 actions, so that's already something to offset the early disadvantage of not having a third peep. You still have to go up to 3 at least, and then 4 and 5, but at least it's going to help you early on. And the last thing is making the life of the growing player miserable by taking food. If it's alright for you and if you need an action and you can also deny food to the growing player, that's going to hamper him quite a bit because he's going to have to take bad actions like day laborer or something, and the advantage of getting a third peep is going to be way less significant. So since the game revolves around growing your family, you really need a way to find food. So that's the second thing you have to think about in a game. Try to find a way to get a food engine going. Why is it that important to get a food engine going? That's pretty easy. Agricola is a tight game. It's one of the tightest games I've ever tried, and you really, really, really don't want to lose points while playing Agricola. You need points all the time, but you also don't want negative points. It's so hard to get points that getting negative points is always bad. It's not like, in Great Western Trail when you can go to Kansas City and get -6 points, or in other games like Terra Mystica where you can exchange victory points for power. Here you don't really want to get negative points. So the begging tokens, which are worth -3 points for each food you're missing when there's a harvest going, there's something you should avoid all the time. Like even one might make you lose the game straight up. And in competitive game, I think it does most of the time. So you shouldn't take begging tokens, so you really need to find a way to get food. And why do you need a food engine? Because otherwise you're going to take bad action like day laborer, and that's going to make your extra worker not worth as much as it could be. You really need to find a food engine so that some action you're going to take are going to be worth way more than 2 food, so that you have other actions to make more points. So there are 2 main ways the game suggests you should go for when trying to go for a food engine. And they are like breeding animals, sheep, cattle, and pigs, or growing some stuff like grain and vegetables. Um, I know that real life is very different. Every vegan will agree with me that growing stuff is way better than eating animals for the overall economy of the real world. But in Agricola, it's the other way around. Animal-based engines are way better most of the time than vegetable-based ones. This is because both the farmland action and the grain seeds action are pretty bad by themselves. So it's way easier to get like a couple of sheep and in a pasture and have them breed and then kill the animals to eat them than it is to go through all the efforts that are required to make a grain engine going. The grain engine has many problems. Again, those 2 actions are not that good by themselves, so you need cards to help you out. It's even better if you find ways to get fields and grain without actually taking these actions. But I mean, if you can take one of these actions, and that action thanks to a card is stronger, then that's all right. Otherwise, they are pretty bad. But the second big problem is the timing. So when you go for animals, it's pretty easy. You just need an improvement that is going to help you, eat animals, like the cooking hearth or the fireplace. And whenever you want, anytime, you can just convert animals and, vegetables, but mainly animals, into food. You can do that every time, and it's very easy to do. While if you go for the stone oven or the clay oven, you need a proper timing. Like you get a free bake action when you buy them, but to take other bake action, it's not actually that easy. The only one that is printed on the board is this one. But there are some cards that are going to help you out with that. But still, the timing is going to be a big problem because you need to set up properly your fields, your crops, and then you have to bake. And it's not easy, let's just say that. So in most of the games, in 4P games, you see more players going for animals than players going for grain early on. Why do I say early on? Because that changes later on. Because Agricola, this is the third most important thing that I'm going to talk about in this strategy guide. In Agricola works very differently from many other Euros. In other Euros, you can take like unpowered actions early on. You can do a bit of everything early on, but later on you really want to specialize. While in Agricola is the other way around. You are probably going to specialize early on, and then you have to do pretty much everything by the end of the game. This is possible because each and every um, point bucket has a cap. You can see it here. Like every field after the fifth one doesn't reward you any point. The same can be said for every grain after the eighth one, etc., etc. So by the end of the game, you want to have like a proper farm, a farm with some animals, some fields, some crops, possibly a lot of all of these, to be able to score a lot of points. So what normally happens in an Agricola game is that you see people going for, you're going to play occupations and minor improvements early on to, specialize in some way. Maybe you have a card that is going to make fishing or day laborer or farmland way better, and you're going to take those actions, or you get something that is going to discount rooms and you're going to be able to grow faster, or something along that line. Then you specialize again by choosing some kind of food engine, because something I didn't say before is that it's possible to go for other food engine for quite some time. Like there are cards that are going to give you food when you gain wood, other cards that are going to make you the resource market better, other cards that are going to make day labor way better so that you take it a lot of times and you're not going to have problems with food for quite some time. But at a certain point, everybody will rely on animals and on crops, not only because it's easier to get a lot of food from them without many actions, but also again because of the scoring thing. You really need to get animals anyway and crops anyway, so you just better try to eat them off than to, try hard to find a different engine. So by the end of the game, you're normally going to find yourself with a very nice, farm. My farm here actually is, it's quite uncommon because I had Braggart, and Braggart leads you to play the game differently, but um, yeah, normally you have like 4 or 5 fields, 3 or 4 pastures, all of the animals or almost all of the animals, a lot of grain, a lot of vegetables, etc., etc. Some minors that are going to give you points, etc., etc. So since you need to get a complete farm by the end of the game, everybody will converge on that. So even the guys who were specializing on animals are going to try and get some fields down and some crops going because they need them for points. There are some very good action to do that later on in the game, but it's also very possible to get many animals in one go later on, while early on you will try to get a couple. By the way, getting one animal at a time is very bad. You shouldn't do that, but getting 2 animals is common. It's what you should strive for. It's not always easy in a big game, but by the end of the game it should be way easier. So there are ways to like catch up on the categories you weren't doing great before, but you should still keep an eye trying to get like a complete farm going. Other than that, since the points are just capped, you should also try to find ways to score more points other than with these categories. I mean, you can do great if you max out each and every category without almost playing cards, but since everybody is trying to do so, it's not that easy. So what you should do is also trying to find other ways to get points out of cards. Like there are many point buckets in the game. There's the grain point buckets, the veggies point buckets, the cows, etc., etc. You should try to find other ways to get points. Like a good source of points are the minors. There are some good minors that reward you many points. Some majors and some occupation, like the braggart, which is of course insane. But yeah, there are many other ways to get points, and you should think about them to try and be able to compete. So when you start off the game, Hopefully you're doing a draft, but maybe it's still early and you're just picking out of like a certain amount of cards. You should try to look at three different kind of cards. You should try to look at early game cards that are going to help you with your overall economy. You should try to look for mid game cards that are going to help you, cover the things you haven't done before. Like some cards that are going to give you fields in the late game. There are some minors that do that, or stuff like that are pretty good in the mid game because they are going to help you bridge towards having a great farm. And the third category is cards that are going to help you score a lot in the late game. So cards that are there just for scoring. The best cards are some cards that are going to help you both at the beginning of the game and at the end of the game. But of course, it depends on the rate. Some cards are like, again, the Braggart have an incredibly good grade, so it doesn't really matter what else they're doing. They're doing what they're doing in the best possible manner, so it doesn't matter what else they're doing. But also you should focus on some synergies. Like I have a very basic synergy here. It's seasonal worker that each time you use the day laborer action space I get one grain or later on one veggie. And the assistant tiller, which says that each time I use the day laborer I can also plow one field. This is the reason I have many fields, by the way. So each time that I went on day laborer I was basically taking three actions. I was taking 2 food, 1 field, and 1 grain seed / vegetable seed. So if you can set up some combos, and there are many combos in the game, like it's one of the sweet parts of the game is setting up those combos, you are going to get very good actions. So you should also think about the synergies, like each and every card doesn't only work on its own, it should work with your overall strategy, and also your overall strategy might change during the game. You should adapt to some people plays a card that combos with day laborer before you maybe think twice about playing your 2 occupations that work with it. I mean, there are many things that can happen in a game, but most of the time you are trying to look for these 3 categories, so early game, mid game, and late game cards, and synergies. That's what you should look at the most. And yeah, that's it. I mean, I think I covered all the basics. There are many things that we can talk about, like the first player. You should take it. You should take it often. It doesn't look like it's a great action, but being the first player is that good. So you should try to set yourself up to taking it many times in a game. Probably around 4 times or something. It depends on many things, but probably around 4 times, I think. It's a good 3-4 times, maybe even more. I don't know. I haven't checked actually. And there are many tricks you can pull off with the meet in place action. So trying to optimize it is pretty good. There are also many things that can be said about minors and occupations and majors, but I think that I covered the basics. So I don't have much to add. If you want to, I might make like an in-depth guide one day, but as of now, I think there's already a lot to think about. So I hope this guide was good for you all. I really hope you were able to enjoy it. And yeah, if you liked it, just, leave a comment or something, and see you next time. Myers out.